Yeah, so I'm glad to hear that you have talked to Matt.
Yeah, we talk regularly. Yeah. I don't really have any other friends who meditate in the same way. So yeah, we have quite very interesting. I think mutually
Perhaps
supportive.
I invite you to join the Discord. There
Yeah,
is.
yeah. I'll join up. Yeah. Um, I don't really understand the website yet, but I guess it's just where people go to kind of.
I we hmm, One of the possibilities, if we were going to go high end, is for someone to actually uh, take a business uh, uh, license from Zoom, so
Mm,
that we could open a meeting and
mm.
keep that meeting open all the time for video. And so people can just sit there, and they can look like they're a Buddha or something until somebody else comes on. And
Watch the online Sangha.
yeah, and
Yeah.
an ongoing online Sangha would be a good way of uh, getting it to the point where we can all meet together.
Hmm. That would be
Uh,
interesting.
Currently, there are not quite, but almost 250 people who subscribe to the videos.
Mm, mm,
And they seem to be viewed at the rate of more than 20 a day. Some of them are really high.
mm,
Uh, the one that the ones that we've done with Guru Viking are both, I think, over 600
mm,
views.
mm,
Uh, so, in that regard, we have quite a large audience.
mm, mm,
That if we could get it spread around, and I've got a couple of people already on Skype,
mm,
but many people don't just automatically go to Skype to get
mm,
news. That's not a news service, and so
mm, mm,
um, we have to kind of wait until people go on to Skype.
mm.
Uh, People, I think, check their emails more often.
Yeah, that's true. That's true for me.
So this is all of these methods and ways of doing things is basically what Willie and Kobe are working on for a database
Mm,
for our new organization
mm,
that we don't have a name for yet, but we've already got a couple of computer scientists working on an underlying database for a website that is designed basically for East and West to meet
mm,
and become unified.
mm, mm,
Because Robert, who lives here in Thailand, he speaks good Thai. He's very well connected to the Thai community in the United States.
mm,
And so we're planning on getting some of the students who go to SPUD, the Seattle uh, Pragmatic Underground Dhamma,
mm,
to get them into that big lot that we know of in Seattle.
mm.
And so we've already talked to the temple abbot about it. And so um, I don't know what time it would be for your time. Uh, we should send that out as best we can. But there's going to be a meeting,
Mm. Okay.
a Skype call, where Robert and I and the Spud guys will be talking about uh, literally how Westerners are to properly invade a Watt and take over. It has to be done properly.
Okay. Insurrectionary training. Okay. When do you know when that will be? That have you got a date and time?
It's going to be Tuesday morning at
Tuesday.
10 o'clock our time here.
Okay.
Monday night Pacific time.
Okay.
I think like 8 to 10.
Okay. Cool. Will you send around a link or?
Okay, I'll remember to send you a link.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, yeah. Or if I can join, I'm not sure what that time is for me, but yeah, I'll try and join.
Your cell phone has a clock
Yeah.
application.
Yeah, I'll be able to work out. Yeah.
I think you're 7 hours ahead.
Yeah, I think
behind. You're
behind.
7 hours
Yeah,
behind.
yeah,
here.
yeah.
So that's going to put it for you in the middle of the night, I think.
Mm-hmm. We'll see how I'm feeling. But will you record it as well?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Cool. Okay. Watch it.
So go ahead. Anyway, the answer to your question was yes. We need to start building a sangha.
Yeah.
A sangha of friends, and it doesn't even matter so much about exactly what tradition they're in.
Mm.
What matters is that they're, willing to start living the Dhamma with a group of friends.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It is no longer textbook stuff anymore. No longer on the cushion stuff anymore. This is real life, real life Dhamma. And in fact, you probably have heard of the sutta. The name of the sutta is Half Sutta.
I don't think I have actually.
Ananda goes to the Buddha and he says that he has heard his teacher Sariputta say that friendship is half of the Dhamma. And the Buddha responds to that, no, it's not half the Dhamma. It is the entire Dhamma.
That's nice.
In the sense of everything winds up becoming friendship. You have to become friends with your old bad feelings. You have to become friends with your own joy. You have to become friends with this present moment.
Mm-hmm.
And then the good part works. You become friends with the outside world. You become friends with everybody around you. That we stop competing. That in fact, that's what the whole point about conceit and competition and wanting things and all of that comes out of those instinctual desires that cause humanity so much global trouble, as well as each one of us on an individual level, but it's built into the society. That's the way things are supposed to be. You're supposed to be greedy and unhappy and striving and clinging and climbing and whatnot. Isn't that the way to go? Because what's your other choice? To sit down and enjoy your life? Oh no, you don't. We'll make sure if you do that, we'll either give you some hemlock to drink or we will starve you to death intentionally, but we're not going to allow you to just sit down and be happy. And that's kind of the view of the society. How dare you leave the world? And yet that's what the whole point of the Sangha was, is the Buddha set up the Sangha so that when people decided to actually physically leave the world, they had someplace to go. And it's been presented kind of that way ever since. Even the word what is a contraction of the word hara or vihara. Now, how they got vihara into the word what can only take an Asian tongue.
Right, okay.
But it actually means home, and nothing much more than that, other than a real home. an easy way to translate it then is, well, it's a home for monks.
Mm-hmm.
And that's true, but it's home for old retired ladies. It's home for the juvenile delinquents. It's home for the stray dogs of the neighborhood.
Mm.
Yeah, as a home. That's
Mm.
it's and that's very amazing quality of the Wat in Thailand. It's sort of, in a way,
Mm.
the dumping ground, the hospital, and the healing
Mm.
for all things mental,
Mm.
and it tends to work. Just being off with nowhere to go and nothing to do, and around other people who are happy and telling you to get out of your misery, and people
Mm.
do. And so, um, finding a home
Mm.
is really an important quality of the Dhamma.
Mm.
So, as the Buddha said, it's the whole Dhamma. But as it were, you can think of it this way: is that it's at least half the Dhamma in the following way. Most Westerners that I know occasionally go to a retreat, partly because they're very expensive, partly because they don't have the time because they're working and whatnot. So mostly they're left on their own to
Mm.
practice,
Mm.
which is like having a bird with one wing. But the quality that we're looking for is the quality of the environment
Mm.
that goes with that territory of the Vihara or the Wat.
Mm.
Um, and you can see this in many places in ordinary culture. One place would be when someone quits drinking, like going to AA. Now they've got AA friends, and they don't they no longer associate or run around with their old drinking buddies.
Mm. Mm.
Isn't that natural?
Yeah.
Okay. When a guy gets married, he no longer hangs out with his bachelor friends. Now he gets a new set of friends, married guys.
Mm.
Okay. Isn't that interesting? Okay. When a guy joins the Army, what does the Army want? They want him 24 hours a day. They want him out of his house so that he does no longer have the option of listening to his daddy bark or listening to his drill sergeant bark.
Mm.
Okay.
Mm.
That's it. Again, to remove the child from the setting so that they can be further trained.
Mm.
And so that's also the part of the quality of becoming a monk, especially if the young time in. The old tradition was 2 years. Every young man would spend 2 years as a monk and 2 years in government service, and by then he was 22 years old,
Mm.
and he was fit for manhood.
Um,
Go
this
ahead.
the it's sort of making me think of something that I've observed from practice on the cushion. Just the idea of like virtuous cycles of things, kind of positive reinforcement and these sorts of things. And I was just wondering if that also relates to Paticca Samuppada in some way. This idea of
That's exactly what we're
yeah,
talking
yeah,
about. Okay. Positive reinforcement, but it's more powerful than most people think.
yeah,
They think that it's only an occasional attaboy
yeah,
rather than an entire environment.
yeah, yeah. Mm.
So when the entire environment is set up for this thing that's new,
Mm.
then it's easier for that to sort of soak in.
Mm.
And so that's the other side of the other wing of the bird.
Mm.
But it is just as it is possible for some people to practice alone and get some good progress.
Mm.
It's also possible for someone to join the monkhood
Mm.
with one wing, and he doesn't do much of any practice or anything. He just kind
Mm.
of goes along to get along, and he's got a really easy life, no worries. All he has to do is fit in. And after about 20 years, that Dhamma that's just in the environment that he's in, it really rubs in deep.
Mm.
And so the environment itself is really that powerful
Mm.
to literally get away from it all.
Mm.
To, in a way, to bring on a new set of rules
Mm.
and a new way of thinking, to substitute the old rules that had the old thinking
Mm.
associated with it.
Mm.
And then the next thing that we do is now we throw out even that new set of rules.
Mm.
Okay, we don't need all of that much rules anymore. Uh, and so we begin to live with just one rule, and that rule is dukkha, dukkha nirodha.
Mm.
And so by having only that one rule, we wind up recognizing that in the context of being a monk, that covers the patimokkha. That's all 227 rules. It's just friendly following, don't hurt nobody.
Mm.
And so it's actually an easier process than most people think.
Mm.
And because of that, there are far more people who have actually gone through the process
Mm.
than most Westerners would give people credit for.
Mm.
As if they think that it's too hard of an operation. And therefore, there's very few or none that have gone through that process. And so they become startled when the old Zen folks will say, hey, man, you're already enlightened. Give up on trying to get something. You've already got it,
Mm.
Because, in fact, that Zen master is absolutely correct.
I'm
And
not so.
that's the whole point of it,
I'm not.
is that
Yeah.
just to accept the way things are right
Mm.
now, to take a
Mm.
deep breath and smile, and everything is hunky-dory.
Mm. um. Yeah, I went to quite a few zazens, but there was no instruction there whatsoever. I know.
But you don't need any instruction. The word itself, zazen, is all you need. Just sitting.
Mm.
But I understand exactly what you're saying. So
Mm.
I can give you all the instructions to learn to just sit, and then you can go to the Zendo and just sit.
That's yeah. No, I mean, yeah. I like the sort of formality of it, and having a walking meditation in the middle was really nice. I like that, and
Mm-hmm.
there's something that you get from group sits, which obviously during a pandemic you can't experience, that you don't quite get from sitting on your own.
Well, we do have the internet, and so at
We do,
least having that Sangha, at least
yeah,
having a lot of friends.
Yeah.
That, in fact, two friends that I'd like to introduce you to is Tim and Agnes.
Mm.
Tim is the dean of library science at a university in Pennsylvania,
Right.
and he's a published author.
Mm.
But most of the stuff that he's done is research papers, and that one of the papers that he put together was a one that brought Dhamma into some aspect of library science. I'm not sure what it was,
That
but that
sounds good.
sparked him with the idea of doing um, a narrative or a novel.
Mm.
And so now Agnes is helping him with that.
Mm.
And they're sharing and splitting ideas. And if you like, you can get in on that and make friends with them while you're doing it. You may have some ideas. He
Mm,
already has most of everything he needs, and it wouldn't be too taxing for you, but it would be a good friendship place
mm, mm,
because you've got that in common.
mm. Yeah, that is interesting.
Now, here's the idea of the novel, and that is that it is most of the books of the Dhamma are instruction manuals that people then get really hung up on the way that the manual itself is constructed,
Mm,
getting to I'm at this place or I'm at that place or doing this, that, and the other thing. But somewhere in that book was also a key ingredient that some of them got out of it that others didn't, and that
mm,
was inspiration.
mm,
So what we're looking for is a novel about a Dhamma dude who the main point of the book is the inspiration that he gets in getting deeper and deeper into the Dhamma
mm,
as his Dhamma path grows.
mm,
And that the kind of language that we were looking for is the kind of language that Richard Bach used in his book, Jonathan Livingston Seagull. This was her bestseller,
I don't know.
1971,
Mm,
72, that
mm,
time. And also another one called Illusions that
mm,
Richard Bach wrote. You can Google those if you want to.
mm, mm,
Everybody's read them.
mm,
I remember them because they were big deals when I was there. These were major sources of the inspiration of the hippie movement
mm,
that was going on at that time.
mm,
And we can spark a new uh, spiritual awakening. We're
mm.
almost ready for it. It's almost like all the tinder and the logs are already set, and all he needs is a fire. Just rub a few things together and get things warmed up. And
Were these books that were they Dharma books, sort of fictional accounts of people finding the Dharma?
mm-hmm.
Mm,
Yeah, that's basically it. Is using fiction to teach the Dhamma,
mm,
with the understanding of not that we're teaching them step by step practice.
mm,
They can observe somebody else's step by step practice and get inspiration from it. That's the way that the book is written. Or maybe I don't know what Tim's going to do with it because it's his project.
I it's interesting because I haven't read that many of the. I haven't really gone direct to the suttas so much. I don't know if that's something you should recommend that I do. Like I've looked at the Anapanasati and I looked at lots of commentaries around it, but I haven't really gone much to the Pali Canon itself. Um, is that something that you think is an oversight that I should look at it directly more?
Well, times have changed now
Oh,
in your favor,
okay.
but something along the lines of this story happened. When Bhikkhu Buddhadasa died, the idea was, well, basically, before he died, uh, he, not just to me, but to many people, was so impressive
Mm,
of how he knew the suttas, and that he would name them generally in the Pali by giving them the Pali name, but he didn't give them reference numbers because that numbering system is more of a library science from the West than it is. Generally in Asia, they're listed by number,
mm,
not by number, but
by name.
by name. And I was jealous. I'll never keep up with where he is. I'll
Mm,
never figure out all of that stuff that he knows, that
mm,
kind of mentality, right?
mm,
And there was a bit of that.
mm,
But then when he died, I recognized, no, it is actually my duty
mm,
to go do that research. And it wasn't but just a few years later that Bhikkhu Bodhi published the first edition of the Majjhima Nikaya, which was a good, firm foundation for getting into the suttas. I still have that book here, and it is really, really threadbare. It is overly worn. And so most of the teachings that I do is out of there, but I also do quite a lot of things that, let us say, that answer particular questions or solve particular riddles or have a particular application for a particular moment. That the Anguttara and the Samyutta Nikaya are both really, really chock-a-block full of one-liner gatyas. And the Dhammapada also. So you would pay in that case. The Dhinga Nikaya has a bit of interesting things to it, and it looks now to some to the later really scholarly monks. And if you want, there's articles. I think Yanasaro has done some of this to point out that the Dhinga Nikaya is sufficiently different in language and intent that it very much looks like a product of the Ashoka time, which was 150 years after the time of the Buddha. So where the Majjhima Nikaya, by and large, it looks like that it is that the Majjhima Nikaya is the product of the first council. But there were some stuff that was done before that. There was actually some things written down.
Right. I didn't know that.
In the time of the Buddha. That would be the Udana, the Sutta Nipata, which have some really brilliant, interesting stuff, especially in regard to the development of the full-blown teaching of Paticca Samuppada that wind up in the Majjhima Nikaya. Okay. So, now, everything is available on the internet. And so generally where I go is to Sutta Central, because Subharo, and I think that Subharo must have had Google Translate or something to help him, because he's got where this guy came from, and the fact that he's got the whole Tripitaka translator is, he must have had some help. And there's certainly that kind of stuff available. But I don't particularly like the translation that he uses. But it's sufficiently consistent that it looks machine generated. But that's the translation that I use, and the reason that I do is because I can mix it with the Pali directly. I can have a line of English, a line of Pali, and a line of English, and a line of Pali. And that really helps a lot. Because I'm really not a detailed Pali scholar, but I know what kind of words to look for, the really important words, and what's the basic definition of those things. So let's put it this way: when I croak, go for it.
Yeah, okay. Maybe we don't have to wait for that.
Don't you come visit me. No, actually, it doesn't matter. And in fact, on a regular basis, I give students, because of the numbering being the easy way out, I generally give them the reference number. Easy for them and easy for me. It's easier for me to remember the numbers of these things than to get the Pali down and get it. And that kind of thing. So, much of the stuff that I teach is out of the Majjhima Nikaya.
The Majjhima Nikaya. Okay, I'm not sure I know how to spell that, but I'll find it on Sutta Central.
Actually, easy enough. You can find that by typing in the number, the letters MN followed by a number, like MN22 or MN 118 or anything under 151.
Okay.
And it will basically take you right to that sutta. Google's that swift.
Okay, great.
It may also sometimes give you Minnesota's highway numbers.
Yeah.
So that's the way of doing it. Is if you go that way, then more than likely you'll be able to find out if Bodhi has a translation available. In fact, the Majjhima Nikaya itself is available on the internet in a one great big giant PDF.
Bit much.
So somebody sit there and scan that book to get it online. Tanisro has done most of the translations of most of the suttas. I'd say at least half or more. I'm not sure about that. And those are under Dhamma something org and Access to Insight. If you go to Access to Insight, you can find the other side easy enough.
Because I'm obviously there's the Pali Canon and then the other subsequent traditions, and we're looking at the Pali. Is that right? Like we're looking at it from a Theravadan. Is that the tradition in which? It
depends upon your intention and purpose. And here's a way of looking at that. Because I'm like first generation Westerner coming out of the Thai forest tradition, that it's still at our level kind of important to know that we know where our teachers got their stuff, that we've got it wired, we've got it nailed down solid if we're going to go out and introduce this stuff to the West. And that's part of the reason why I spend a lot of time referring back to the sutras themselves so that students can take that verification that they have. Basically, it's like this. The first thing is that to check out anything I say against modern physical science. That I may sometimes get the details wrong, but the overall sense and purpose is that this system that the Buddha taught fits in with science. This is not magic. This always fits the real world as people normally experience it. The second point then is that so it's making sense basically as the first criteria. The second one is that when I'm teaching stuff, I will always defer back. Well, if I teach different than what you get out of Bhikkhu Buddhadasa, then take Bhikkhu Buddhadasa over me. To take him as the authority. But in most cases, he and I are in unison. Because I've gotten my stuff from him. I understand where it was, and now I've gone back to the suttas and back it up. So now we can go all the way back to the suttas. So when I and Bhikkhu Buddhadasa and the suttas all agree with your understanding of reality, we now have only one piece of the pie missing. And that is your deep experience of exactly that this stuff is correct. That this is it. This is the only, this without a doubt. Okay. That's the quality of the missing ingredient that nobody can give you. Only you can know that this is it. The Eightfold Noble Path of the Buddha and the way that we practice it with Anapanasati. It works. This is it, babe. I got it wired now. I understand this is the way to go. So, given it from that perspective, that's also something that needs to be, in a way, sold. That we really do not need the sutras. We do not even need the name of the Buddha. We don't even need the name of Bhikkhu Buddhadasa, and we never did need Dhammarato. All we need is the laugh, the chuckle, the fire. That's what needs to be transmitted, which always transmits from teacher to student, that fire for the Dhamma. Catching you on fire for it, getting that enthusiasm up to the kind of a high pitch, and that enthusiasm also can be related to pity and right attitude. The right attitude is that this stuff really does work, and I'm alight with it. And it's almost like the Dhamma itself overtakes our life. But a more accurate way of saying it is that no, with an awakened way of looking at things, all we really see is Dhamma. That's all there is just Dhamma. So it really hasn't invaded it all. What's actually happened instead is that we're looking at things at a much deeper level, and we really enjoy that we can see things at a much deeper level. There's a great deal of joy and satisfaction that is derived from this, and that satisfaction and joy grow then into an enthusiasm, an eagerness for the Dhamma.
I can see that happening. Yeah.
When that kind of thing occurs, that's when someone is now actually ready to teach the Dhamma. Now that you're on fire, right. So it's really hard to teach the Dhamma when the teacher himself is not on fire with the Dhamma. And you can see that actually in any other profession. I've seen math teachers that are really, really excellent math teachers because they're on fire with their math. Teachers who are still struggling with the math, who don't quite understand it at the deepest detail, and therefore a little bit afraid of what their students might ask them, they're not such good teachers. So you can see it at even that level of school teacher, that this idea of becoming on fire with your topic is the way for a teacher to spread it. And that, in many cases, is very hard to do in a retreat setting. Especially if it's a Goenka retreat. It's really hard for Goenka's fire, and I know he had it, to transmit over the years through a videotape. And so now we're talking about it. If there is a distinction to be made between fire in the belly and the knowledge of the suttas, you can see that, well, if I've got that kind of choice to make, I kind of think I know which way to go, because I've already seen a whole bunch of guys who went in the other direction. And now they're well known for their scholarly knowledge of the Dhamma and their knowledge of being able to translate. But they don't set people on fire.
So it's about balance.
In a way, yes. Yes. It's not that there is no room for knowledge,
Yeah.
but rather that knowledge is kind of a fuel
Mm.
that can be used.
Mm.
Right, and that's the idea of setting it on fire.
Mm.
Yes,
I mean, just
go ahead.
no, just like in terms of my own practice, the thing that that really transformed it was the moment when I realized how fun, how as just enjoyable sitting on the cushion could be, and then that generated the enthusiasm to sit regularly, and then that kind of in turn kind of changes how you think about how you want to use your time and organize your time. And
Absolutely, you can see the Dhamma is taking over
yeah.
your life. I told you. I told you.
Yeah, but that's really interesting, the way that like the jhana the jhanas could be maybe thought of as similar in as less is something that in themselves have a kind of pleasurable quality that then
Absolutely.
lead
The
you.
Buddha talked about he who is in jhana
Mm.
is abiding in pleasure. Now, that could have been a joke. That could have been an ironic joke.
Right.
Depends upon how we look at what the Buddha is actually teaching. But even if he was being snickering at it, he's still giving it the credit that it is due. That one who is in jhana is abiding in pleasure. It's a pleasant abiding. That's the whole point. Gosh, it's really interesting. That pleasure starts in first jhana. If
Mm.
we cannot pop into the fourth jhana without it being very pleasurable.
Mm.
And part of the pleasure is I can do this.
Mm.
Yeah, if you can begin to control the mind up to that level, there's an amazing amount of pleasure that comes from the knowledge that I can actually do this. Now, I read it in a book once, and now here we are.
Yeah.
And so, in all of those cases, yes, it's all abiding in pleasure.
Mm. Mm.
However, the first jhana has the important quality is that, and the mind has not yet shut down. The mind still in that state of pleasure has the ability to put the connections together, to think in concepts,
Mm.
and to begin also in this point to begin to control the thoughts.
Mm. Mm.
Because we don't want to have it as an on-off switch.
Right.
For the second jhana, the off switch then of the second jhana is there's no thought. Fine, okay. What happens when you turn the thought machine back on again? You're going to get the same old junk that was coming out of it the first place.
Yeah.
But in fact, a better fallback position would be when you flip the jhana switch to come out of second jhana, you come back into the first jhana.
Mm.
And where the first jhana is where we are already skilled at controlling the thoughts.
Mm.
That's where we learn to control them. That's what we mean by applied and sustained thought, because we're applying the mind and keeping it sustained in pleasure.
Mm.
And we do that, keeping it in pleasure, by being able to control the kind of thoughts that we have.
Mm.
By saying, wow, this is so good. Or like in this particular moment, wow, my mind is so strong that I can feel all three of those mosquito bites on my left foot, and I am not going to scratch.
Yeah, that's powerful. We don't have many of those here, so that's good.
A lot of people leave Thailand because they don't like the mosquitoes. I didn't even mention the bone on the back of my right leg. Not going to scratch it either. Right now, the mosquito just came out.
Oh no. I've had in some sits recently. I've had an experience of what seems to be close to first jhana, but doesn't have the like emotional component. Doesn't have the sukha kind of aspect of it, and I'm getting the kind of PT, like physical side of it. But then there's it feels kind of dark. It like almost like sinister kind of place to be mentally. So I think.
Okay, now here's what's happening with that. We can say offhand that we wake up in stages. You can tell that happening when you wake up first in the morning. That when you first wake up, you're not fully awake. An example of that is, where's the alarm clock? And that's about the only thought I can muster together.
Yeah.
Especially if I'm laying on the cell phone. So, we wake up in stages. If we understand that, we can understand that sati is about coming up to a fairly high level rather than just a basic level. It is easier to come up to the basic level, and this is the level of sati that a lot of students go into, thinking that that's the real deal. The big difference is that in that that first low level of waking up is that there's not enough effort to get out of bed yet. Okay, we actually have to come to a point of actually fully awake before we can take the effort to get out of bed. Well, we do that also in the mind, that we wake up a bit, but it's not got to wake up enough to come out of the state that we were in, which now we're talking about still laying on the bed. So that feeling system that we were in has not been really disturbed yet. This is where the Buddha talks about the gladdening of the mind stage, or taking that effort to really get up, you know, not just wakey and lay in bed and wait for the snooze alarm 3 or 4 or 5 times. But now's the time, because it doesn't matter how many times that snooze alarm goes off. Eventually, we actually do wake up. That happens also through the meditators. We'll be kind of awake and then back into it, and kind of awake and back into it, kind of awake and back into it, and then we come, wait a minute. Let's actually change what's going on here. Let's take a deep breath and begin to actually wake up out of those bad feelings. So, if you're actually waking only enough up to where you're not out of the bad feelings, that's what's going to give you that sensation of the jhanas, in the sense of the physical sensation. But it's not going to be really satisfying. But when you wake up completely and fully, we can become up to a state of satisfaction, because we really do say, I'm in charge now. And and in charge says, I'm going to choose to feel good. I am the champion here. I can throw those bad feelings out. I'm the emperor of this pile of dirt.
Yeah.
That I'm not going to be buried under my own pile of dirt. So we can come out of it. That's another. I like that emperor sitting on top of our own pile of dirt, because that fits in with the old song from the 50s. I'm sitting on top of the world. I didn't realize that world was my own pile of crap.
No, I had that. That's good. Yeah, I found that metta practice, which I haven't tended to do in a really formal way, has been useful for combating that feeling of feeling one aspect of like the piti, but not the sukha.
In a way, when they're real, they're opposite ends of the same scale.
Right. Yeah.
In the sense that both of them are very satisfying. An example would be when the football team in the tournament wins, gets a touchdown, or in footy or whatever sport they score, then the people will stand and cheer and yell and rave and throw their fist in the air, right? But after they do that for about 10 or 15 or 20 seconds, then they'll sit back down in the stand and relax and take a deep sigh. Maybe they'll look at the scoreboard and feel satisfied or whatever like that. Okay, so these are the two stages of piti and sukha. One is more enjoyable than the other, but both of them have the quality of satisfaction. They both have the quality of success, but one is more energetic than the other. Here's another example. At New Year's Eve, the ball drops in Times Square, and everybody's counting 5, 4, 3, 2, and the excitement is building, and then 0, and then everybody cheers, yay, yay, and they honk the horn, wah, 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 and all of that goes on. And within about 15 or 20 seconds, some band someplace will start up Old Lang Syne, and now everybody is hugging and rocking back and forth. And so that first point was the rapture or the piti or the eruption from the joy of the New Year's. I don't know why people are so happy and excited about New Year's. It's just a damn clock. But they do. And they give themselves this enormous hit of piti. And then the next is the end is the sukha. So when we think of it like that, this actually, we really want to build that kind of energy up with that real feeling of success, with that real feeling of almost like juicy under pressure.
Okay.
Okay, that is both juicy and under pressure. Sort of like a gusher.
Okay, yeah. All right.
Okay. And where we're going to get the energy for that is through that process of the right effort of gladdening the mind. Gladdening the mind. I can do this. I caught you. Okay. And so that needs to be practiced. But when it builds up over the course of a few minutes of sitting practice, then there comes that kind of relief of, wow, this is so nice. So it does take effort. It takes some effort.
Yeah.
And effort requires us to wake up, to really wake up, see what's going on.
Yeah, no, I think it's been focused too much on the cheering, shall we say?
I'm sorry, what was that?
It's too focused on the cheering side of the cheering part of the that metaphor you just described, not the sitting down and looking at the scoreboard.
Right, because looking at the scoreboard is part of the investigation. Wow, this does feel nice.
Yeah.
This feels so good.
Yeah. That's really useful. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I've got a couple other students waiting.
Okay, cool. All right. Yeah, I'll let.
So we'll finish now. I'm really glad you called. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much, Dhammarato. I'll speak to you soon. I'll call you again soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.